Welcome to the Mindful Escape podcast. My name is Leighton Jewett and I am your host. And today we're talking to Chelsea. Chelsea is a hypnotherapist and she talks about her journey over the last 9 years. When she left school, it was very much expected for her to go into a 9 to 5 lifestyle, but there was something in her heart that wasn't allowing her to do it. She talks about the challenges that she came up along the way, and most importantly, the limiting beliefs that were stopping her from achieving what she wanted to achieve. As you go through the episode, you'll realize that sometimes when you want to live a certain lifestyle, it's not easy to make that happen immediately. It takes time, it takes consistency. And Chelsea explains that really well and how she transitioned from one way of life to another. So I hope you're sitting comfortably and enjoy the episode. Hi, Chelsea. Welcome to Mindful Escape. Tell us about yourself.
Hello. Hi, Leighton. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm Chelsea. I'm a hypnotherapist, and yeah, I live in Pensacola, Florida currently. I'm originally from upstate New York. I have been in the business world for, you could say like 7, 8 years. It's definitely been a process. I am a full-time hypnotherapist, and I'm excited to talk more about that today.
Amazing. So most of the guests that come on here, they've come from like a corporate world and then they move into something that's more purposeful, something that they're more passionate about. Tell us about your background.
Yeah, so when I originally was going to school, I was actually going to school for nursing. My whole premise was to help other people. But when I got to school and I was trying to get into the nursing program, I was just miserable all of the time. And it's funny looking back now because my sister is younger than me and she's a nurse. And I just hear her stories. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I could never do that. So it's funny how your path, you think you want one thing at a certain age, but as you grow, it evolves and changes. And I've seen that so much throughout my 20s. So I'm now 29. And so, like I said, I started off going to nursing school, evolved into psychology. So I ended up getting my degree in psychology with a minor in gender studies. But the goal was to become like a school counselor or just a counselor in general. And I was realizing one day when I was sitting in the library studying for finals. I mean, I was so stressed out, like on the verge of tears. I realized I had to go back to school. I had to get my master's degree to even make like max $63,000 a year. And I was like, okay, I am so far this much in debt. I'm about to get even more into debt. $63,000 a year is just not going to cut it. And that's not a income to like scoff at all, but I just realized like wow, like I am not happy doing this. I love school, but the stress that comes along with it, I just wish I could go study without the stress of like having to take tests, having to write papers. So, anyways, fast forward to the end of my bachelor's degree, I decide to move to Florida. So, that was a really huge jump for me because all my friends, all my family is in New York. And so, I get to Florida. My grandpa is there. And so is my brother. He is stationed there from the Navy, but that was it. That's all I had there. Um, and I was kind of freaking out at that time. I was a Beachbody coach, which I think a lot of people kind of, you hear pyramid scheme or, it's like, hey girl culture, which it totally is. But I'm so grateful I had that experience because it got me a foot into what the entrepreneurial world looked like. And it made me want more. So when I started off, I had to get a job. Like the Beachbody was not paying the bills, like not even close. I mean, I was maybe making $300 a month with that. So I started working in jewelry, and it was like a jewelry store in the mall. I was making like $12 an hour, but I was so young. I was so excited to be in Florida, but I knew like there had to be a bigger picture. My whole game plan was to work for myself one day. I didn't know what that was going to look like just yet, but I knew like this wasn't it. Working at the mall, oh my gosh, it was the worst ever. I stayed there for a year, but I could barely make it through that year. It was just so bad. When someone's telling you where to be, what to wear, how to say things, what quotas to make, I mean, it was just miserable for me. And so the year comes up, and I, during that year, I ended up dating someone who got a job in South Florida. And we moved there. We moved to West Palm Beach. And there I was like, that's when I came up with the idea of Uplevel Society. So, Uplevel Society is the name of my business now. And the premise was always to help women who have anxiety, because that's something that I severely struggled with. Um, but it was just an idea in my head, a little seedling, and so I still had to get a job. So I ended up getting a job at a gym as a receptionist, and I worked there, and it was fine. I ended up getting to serving, long story short, and serving and bartending ended up being like my holy grail. Honestly, that's like one of my big advice. I know we'll get into that, but I was able to construct my schedule to work from like 4 p.m. to like 11 p.m. And so I had all that time of the day to build what I have now.
Amazing. So just jumping back a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah, it sounds like there were quite a few instances or things that came up along that journey that kind of made you think, okay, this isn't the route that I want to go down. Was there one particular trigger or maybe two or three that you thought, okay, this is definitely why I don't want to do this kind of 9 to 5 or the traditional working route?
Oh man, I mean, being anywhere on time to somewhere that you don't want to be is like the worst thing ever. I just remember waking up every day like, oh no, I had to be at work. I had to be at work. And it's it's like this feeling of you don't have a choice. It's this feeling of, oh my gosh, like I don't even particularly like everyone I work with. I don't even really believe in what I'm doing. And so it's just there's so many little moving pieces that made me feel like I cannot continue doing this for the rest of my life.
Okay. And so then you came up with Up Level Society, you were doing the bar work, and I guess with this transition, there were challenges that came up. What
Oh
were the
yeah.
main ones?
The biggest one is limiting beliefs. It's the belief in myself. So, I mean, I grew up with parents who, my mom was a bus driver. My dad is an electrician, and those are great jobs, but I by no means come from money. I by no means come from people who are in the entrepreneurship world. And so I didn't know what I was doing. There's not one person on either side of my family that has done what I've done, that has built an audience, that has, made my own income from something that I created and sold. And so, I mean, it was a completely new blueprint, a new path. And so a lot of my limiting beliefs were, this is impossible. You can't do this. Like, how can you expect to make your own money? And so overcoming so many limiting beliefs was the biggest challenge.
And had you got into hypnotherapy by this point or not yet?
No.
Okay, so this is great.
Um,
What, how did you start overcoming these limiting beliefs then at this point in your life?
Yes. So as I kind of previously said, I was dealing with like severe anxiety. Like, I mean, I'm talking like panic attacks every day. I mean, rushing myself to the emergency room. It was so bad. Like the anxiety was just like all up in my body all the time. And so a lot of the limiting beliefs actually, I think we're just overcoming so much that it was like coming through as anxious habits. So I had to just help myself to feel better. So a lot of that was journaling, uh, saying what I was grateful for. Tapping was a huge one. Do you know what tapping is?
Yeah.
EFT. So that was a huge part of my journey. Counseling. I did go to counseling. I did go to therapy, and it was okay. I did get a few like tidbits from there for help. Like one of the biggest ones was like talking to the anxiety. So like talking to it as if it's outside of you. So I had to stop identifying with the anxiety. So that was a huge one. So if not just anxiety, so anyone listening to this, if you're having a problem and you're identifying with it, that's that's going to be so hard to break away from because your identity is everything to you. So for me, for years and years and years, I'm like, my anxiety, I am anxious. And that was who I was. I was an anxious person. But my counselor was allowed me to kind of like finally see like it's separate for me. Like I am me. This is the anxiety, and the anxiety likes to hang out sometimes, even though I don't want it to. And so like talking to it as if it was like a different person. And that was really helpful for me. So I started saying things like the anxiety I'm experiencing, and things like that.
So you mentioned, I think I missed one. You said journaling, tapping, counseling. Was there one other you mentioned?
Oh, I like really just trying to be in gratitude, thinking about things that I'm grateful for.
Gratitude.
Oh, and exercise. Exercise was a huge one for me because with the whole beach body thing, I mean, personal development was a huge one as well, like reading personal development books, listening to YouTube like TED Talks, anything about Tony Robbins, Les Brown. I mean, I just was trying to infiltrate my brain with a new way of thinking. And of course, it was slow at first. I mean, it took years. It took years because I was doing all of this consciously until, I realized what the subconscious was.
And just out of interest, did you come across affirmations or anything like that at this point?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And did you kind of implement that? Was that something you found useful or not as much as the other parts?
Yeah, and so it's what's really interesting about affirmations, like let's just say like I am worthy. You can say I am worthy, I am worthy, I am worthy till you're blue in the face, but if you're not actually feeling it, it's almost just like fruitless. So I actually have a very interesting statistic about affirmations. So if you're saying an affirmation from the beta brainwave, which is conscious, you are very aware, you would have to say it 500 times a day for 30 days straight for it to even like start to infiltrate into your body versus with like a suggestion, which is a affirmation in hypnotherapy world. If you said I am worthy in a theta brainwave state, you start to soak that up immediately and start to feel as though.
Okay. And I guess this is what you do, right, with hypnotherapy is getting people into that beta state.
Yeah. And of course, like you would have to do it consistently. It's not just like a one time, like, oh, I'm healed forever. It's more of that consistency of going to the theta brainwave and knowing that you're going to get faster results like that.
Great. Okay. Really interesting. So coming back to you and your journey with these challenges that are coming up for you, and you obviously learn a lot of ways of coping with the challenges. Are there any lessons that you'd want to share or any main lessons that you think really came up for you during that time?
Yeah. So being in business, there's something about it that makes you get to know yourself on a very intimate level. Especially, I feel as though if you are kind of in like this online business space, if you are like in the spiritual business space, working on yourself and making your mindset as great as possible is such a huge thing. And I've learned so much about myself that I don't think I would have ever known if I had just stayed on the typical path. I don't think I would have done all this extra work on myself and, the people that I have reached out to. So really, I kind of feel like I was forced into being the best version of me. And of course, that best version is always evolving and changing. And, I'm always trying to do my best. Yeah, I really think that, you know, business is great and making money is great, but it's the person behind the business. It's how you feel running that business that matters the most of all.
So, personal development, is it the constant growth that was the lesson for you, or was it something else?
Yeah, so there it's so interesting because I think there are some people who like knock on personal development, things like that. It's like hokey or whatever. But I remember one Christmas, a mentor sent me my first personal development book ever. And it was called You Are a Badass. And it's by Jen Sincero. Basically, everyone in the world knows what this book is now, but this was about 8 years ago when I got it. I read it and my mind was blown. I was forever changed by this book and I just wanted more and more after that. And so it was funny because I went to the back of her book and she had a bunch of like recommendations. And her one of the recommendation was Ask and It Is Given by Esther and Jerry Abraham Hicks, if you know what that is. And so I was like, ooh, interesting. Like, I like that. Ask and It Is Given. So I started YouTubing, right? Because I didn't have the book yet. I'm like, I feel like I'm joining a cult. Like that was like the first, but it felt so good. But I literally thought I was joining a cult. Like I was like, this, I have to be really wary. Like, what do you mean manifesting? Like, this is crazy talk. Like, but it just kept growing from there. And it was so drastically different from how I felt being so anxious all the time, this new mindset. And I was like, I don't care if it's crazy. I don't care if people are going to judge me. Like, I want to feel better.
Yeah.
Um, and so hopefully that's answering your question, but it's really, I don't think anyone can run a, well, I guess not anyone, but it would be really hard to run a successful business when you are constantly fighting yourself and constantly hating yourself and constantly just doubting yourself. Like you, there has to be like, and of course I'm not perfect. Of course I still have fears. Like doing these podcasts are like a brand new thing for me. It's like a whole new comfort zone I had to step out of, right? And so
Hmm.
I'm constantly evolving, constantly stepping out of my comfort zone. It's not something that like one day you're going to reach, right? It's just like that, a constant evolvement.
So it's really interesting what you were saying about it feeling strange. And I wonder, so when you started this journey, were you very spiritual? You were more practical? And how did you change as you grew?
Yeah, I guess no one's ever asked me that. I've never really thought about it because I was really close with my grandmother growing up, and unfortunately, she passed away when I was in 10th grade. And after that, I stopped believing in a higher power. I was completely I couldn't imagine someone as sweet as my grandmother having to go through what she had to go through, which was just all various cancers and things, a lot of pain. And so I remember the moment I was sitting on her couch while we were all there, waiting for her to pass. And I was just like, I'm done. I don't believe in God. And I didn't really grow up in a family that was very spiritual. Like my mom took us to church once in a while and like our Methodist church that was in town, but it wasn't like a very rigorous thing. And so I kind of had the chance though to grow my own kind of like spirituality because my parents didn't put that pressure on me or any of us, my siblings, to believe a certain thing. So I think I had that going for me. But I do remember when that happened. And so I really as I got older, I just remember being interested in crystals and being interested in like, you know, what I feel like I'm going to say this wrong, Buddhism. I think I'm trying to sing that right. But just like I realized there are so many different religions, and I'm like, wow, like I don't believe one is right. I just think there really is like this higher power, and feeling good in your body is like almost like a religion, right? And so, those routines that you are implementing and the way that you are reacting to yourself and others and kindness and I hope that's answering your question. I really, it did grow. And I don't remember like a certain turning point in my life where it was just like, oh, I'm going to be spiritual now. I do think like this like personal development journey though allowed me to like step more into my spirituality. I don't, I don't label myself into like a certain religion. That's just like a personal preference for me. But I do believe there's something out there.
Yeah, I think the reason I ask is more that because you were talking about the mindset shift of how we see ourselves and how we see the world. And I think from the background I came from as well, it was very practical and spirituality is very woo-woo. And as I've gone on this journey and I'm feeling more confident in myself and exploring different things, and like actually, I'm going to go a bit deeper into that because I don't care what people think of me.
Yeah.
And I want, it sounds like it's similar to you. You're thinking, actually, okay, let's try this manifestation. Let's try these affirmations. Let's try hypnotherapy. It's like you're trying things that maybe before were completely outside your comfort zone, and other people may have judged you for that. But
Yeah.
now you're just feeling a lot more confident with it and happy to, I guess, experiment.
Yes, and what's coming up for me with that is like, oh, my family totally thinks I'm nuts, and and not in like a bad way though. And what's funny though, because my mother, she watches my stories and stuff, and she's my biggest supporter, and she's just always like, Chelsea, like, whatever, you're crazy, like, believe whatever you want to believe, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. But she's always implementing the things that I'm teaching, and she's like, oh wow, it
Brilliant.
actually works, like I feel better, and so. It's just funny to me. It's like you just have to do what feels good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because the people that are listening to this are going to be at different stages on their journey. And sometimes when we start speaking about spirituality, for someone at the start of their journey, it's like, I don't believe in any of that. But someone who's kind of further on, they're like, oh, I like this part. So yeah, it's fascinating. So going back to your experience, you've now come a long way with your business. And I guess I'd be curious to know if you were to speak to your younger self or someone who is in the position that you were when you were kind of thinking, okay, I have to go down this corporate 9 to 5 route, but I'm not sure it's right for me. What kind of advice would you give?
Mm, yes. I remember back then, like I was kind of saying, it didn't really feel like a choice. And, to change that mindset of it's not a choice to this is going to get me to where I want to go. Like, obviously, I had to pay my bills, I had to feed myself. So, this is just a temporary thing that's allowing me to get to the next place. And another big thing, while you are trying to get to that next place, not comparing yourself to people who already have done it or who are saying that they have done it online. And, I know I have been stuck in that comparison of women that are younger than me and are hitting like 50K months or something insane. Like they started a t-shirt business and when like two months it's like exploding. Or you're looking at people who are like 20 steps ahead of you and have been doing this for a long time and are just really good at it, and you're comparing yourself to their chapter 100. That's just going to drive you crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So there is the comparison, it's the mindset shift of like this is just temporary. It's also, there's going to be times, and maybe this was just my experience, but you're going to see someone else that's really successful and maybe want to try to copy, their like the way that they post, the way that they say things, because you're like, oh, that works. But you can never copy someone else's vibe, and just realizing that your vibe is good enough. The way that you say things, the way that you think about things, the way that you like to create things is good enough. And when you become consistent enough with it and people see it enough times, you will grow a following that knows you for your brand. So not copying someone else, and then showing up every day. It's gonna like not every day you're going to want to, but if you can show up and at least put one post out, one email out, it's just something to show that hey, I'm here and I exist. And I know something that I struggled with. It was like I have a business, and then I had no offers, and I wasn't sharing any offers, and I just thought I could manifest these clients to come into my life. I'm like, okay, so what are they going to buy exactly? Because I'm not talking about what I'm selling. And so that was a turning point for me, is like create offers and put them out there. And I think the last one really is just like don't overcomplicate it. I feel like I'm giving you so much right now, but like don't overcomplicate it. I think especially for me in the beginning of my business, I was like, oh man, I'm going to need a website, and I'm going to need, to hire a VA, or I'm going to have to need A, B, and C. And really all you need is an Instagram, a Facebook, a TikTok, show up, talk about yourself, have a little place. There's so many free resources online to help you set up, a moving and running business.
Yeah, and you're right. You gave me a lot there. I'm just going to pick a couple out.
Yeah, I came prepared.
So the ones that jumped out to me were comparing yourself with someone that's really far ahead.
Yeah.
And I think that's linked to showing up every day. And also the other one you said, I think it was about not being too hard on yourself.
Yeah, not overcomplicating it, not comparing yourself, and not trying to copy other people.
Yeah, and because I think one of the issues that we have today is that people are expecting instant gratification and results immediately.
Mhm.
And I guess one of the conversations that keeps coming up is that people who work in the corporate world, they work for a month and then they get their monthly salary. But in the business world, when you're starting your own business, you do have to show up every day. You do have to put the effort in, and you most likely won't get the reward straight away. So it's
Oh,
that
yeah.
showing up every day, the consistency. And if you expect to get the results that someone who's that far ahead of you, you're just going to end up feeling demotivated, disappointed, and probably want to give up and end up staying in your 9 to 5 corporate job.
Yes. Yes. And to give people reference, when I started my Beachbody business at like, let's just say 20. I'm 29 now. So I did Beachbody for 3 years. And then I got into up level society. So what is that? I math, but it's been a long time. So I did bartending for the longest time at night while I built my business. And it actually is just this year that I don't have any bartending. I mean, I cut back for, I'm like, oh, I'm here 2 days a week, 1 day a week. And I like slowly cut myself off. And that was just a personal choice. The sun is coming through perfectly right now. But I finally was like, I just have to cut it off. I just have to go for it. Cause I think again, I was like that limiting belief is like, can I actually do it without a side hustle? Right. But it took me a long time. It took me like a decade to get here. And I'm not saying it has to take that long. It doesn't have to take that long. But just being realistic with yourself. And I think it's good to hear that sometimes because I feel only things I see is like, oh, I was able to quit my job in 1 year, or I was able to do this or that. I'm like, that must have been nice, but that just
Mhm.
wasn't my story, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I think that's great because it shows that you can do it and you can have that almost like a safety net, that income if you've got rent to cover or you've got bills to cover or there's something you need a stable income, you can have that as your
Yeah.
steady, and then you focus the rest of your time on building your business. And a lot of people, they can do a full-time job and then maybe do their side hustle or start working on what they're passionate about and build it up over time. So there are options. And yeah, as you said, like if you can quit your job within a year, that's fantastic.
That's
But it's
amazing.
not always the case. Was there anything else that you wanted to add? It would be great to hear a little bit about what you're doing right now and how you're helping people on their journey.
Yeah, so I am a hypnotherapist, and it's very important. I like to add this to ask people about their certification because, unfortunately, in the hypnotherapy world, you can get certified in like 2 days or less. There's not a lot of regulations, but I went to a very rigorous school. It was a 250-hour credit course. I felt extremely prepared when I came out of the schooling. And yeah, I think hypnotherapy. So talking about all of this and talking about the limiting beliefs and that mindset it takes to be an entrepreneur and like focusing on yourself and manifesting and all the things comes down to your subconscious. So all hypnotherapy has a bad rep because of Hollywood. It's been shown as like blackouts, it's been shown as sleep or mind control, and all of that is completely false. I cannot make you be, do, or say anything when it comes to hypnotherapy. You come to me with the results that you want to achieve. And all I do is, and it's basically affirmations, as well as like a conversation with your subconscious that actually like will talk back to you. It's very interesting. Um, and we put in the results that you're wanting to achieve. So like say you're wanting to make more money online, right? You just be like every day in every way. It's becoming easier for me to show up on the online space, and clients are, really responding to that. And it's amazing to me like how that works, but it's like if you don't believe that you can do it, you are putting that energy out and people can feel that. And so when it comes to hypnotherapy, I mean, you could do anything. You can lose weight, you can stop smoking. It's like if there's any habits that you want to start or stop, any belief that you're trying to change, um, as well, they're like, so your subconscious is 95% of you, and it has all of your habits, beliefs, your automatic bodily function, so the way that you react to things, so that also includes anxiety, and your short-term and long-term memories. So with that, it becomes who you are. You are how your subconscious is. So I always like to kind of explain it like this with, I think it's the best way with like working out. So if you've ever tried to like stay committed to a routine, like a workout routine, and you like just start and stop. You start and it kind of just feels like you're dragging yourself or like hitting a dead end. It's not your fault. You're not lazy. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just your subconscious is not on board. And all you have to do is go into that like theta brainwave, which is we only have four. We only have four brainwaves. We have beta, which is what we're in. We're very conscious, we're very aware. There's alpha, there, which is right below beta, and it's like light daydreaming. So you can find yourself here when you're scrolling or daydreaming. Then there's theta, which is that sweet spot for hypnosis, and then delta is sleep. So we want to get you between the alpha and delta. And that theta, your subconscious mind opens up and your conscious mind kind of takes a nap. So everything is being absorbed at a higher rate. And to kind of give you like a statistic that will potentially blow your mind, if you were to do 600 sessions of psychoanalysis, or this is what they found through research, 600 sessions of psychoanalysis, which is a form of therapy, you are looking at getting a 38% improvement rate on whatever you've been trying to work on. Versus with hypnotherapy, 6 sessions for a 93% improvement rate, which is
Wow.
mind blowing. And
Yeah.
a lot of things I've been struggling throughout the years. If I finally did hypnotherapy for them and it was like, done. I don't have to deal with it anymore. And so it is incredible. It's not woo woo, it's very science based. And it will get you to the results that you're looking for faster. So keep that in mind.
Amazing. And when did you come across, or how did you come across hypnotherapy on your journey?
Yeah. So I feel as though the universe has been trying to get me to be a hypnotherapist for like the last 7 years. But I, back when I was really anxious, I was having severe stomach pain. So I was getting up and I was just like bending over in pain, like constantly in like pain in my stomach. And the doctors didn't know what was wrong with me. My blood tests came back normal. They're just like, you are just extremely anxious. Like you need to take a pill for it. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And so I was kind of at a loss. It was like 2 months of just severe pain. And I came across hypnotherapy for health and I listened to it for 2 days and the stomach pain went away forever. And I was like, wow, okay, this works.
Very good.
Yeah. So, and I didn't touch it again until like 5 years later. But I did do like a mini certification on Udemy, if you know what that is.
Hmm.
But I did not feel prepared after that. But it wasn't until, yeah, just 2 years ago when I was like, okay, I'm ready for a career change and I'm really ready to make some impact and to help a lot of people. And this is how I felt that I needed to do it.
Amazing. So good. Brilliant. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Uplevel Society. If you're doing the whole TikTok thing, you can find me at Chelsea the Hypnotherapist. And yeah, I have a link in my bio that shows you everything. I have free hypnosis audios in there. I have my website. I have a bunch of other things. And so, yeah. Thank
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
So there we have it. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I think Chelsea gave some really good pieces of advice. And the one that really stood out for me was doing one thing every day for your business. And it seems to be coming up a lot in the conversations that I'm having. And the reason why I mention it again is because if you are in your full-time job, your full-time career, and you're committed financially, and there's no way that you can make that leap right now, by doing one thing every day that pushes your business, your idea, or taking a step or doing an action towards your passion or what you feel your purpose is, will build up over time. The compound effect will one day enable you to make that step. And while it might seem like a long way away right now, as you build that up over time, it will get closer and closer and closer. If you enjoyed this episode, Make sure you give it a like, subscribe, and follow. And we'll see you next week with another exciting guest.